Breaking news: it is anticipated that the U.S. Defense Secretary will urge a more precise strategy in Gaza while in Israel. The latest test of the U.S. ability to use its unfaltering support for the offensive to mitigate its catastrophic effects on Palestinian civilians will take place on Monday when U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin visits Israel. During his visit, Austin is expected to urge Israel to end major combat operations in Gaza. Israeli protesters have demanded that the government resume talks with Hamas in order to release more hostages following the mistaken killing of 3 by Israeli troops while they were waving a white flag. Protesters from France, the United Kingdom, and Germany, 3 of Israel's closest allies, joined worldwide demands for a ceasefire over the weekend. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has stated categorically that the country will not stop fighting until it deposes Hamas from power, undermines its formidable military capabilities, and retrieves the dozens of hostages that the group has held since the attack on October 7, which started the war. In addition to urging Israel to take stronger measures to avoid harming civilians, the United States has vetoed UN requests for a ceasefire and has hurried munitions to Israel. Strikes on residential buildings in northern Gaza killed more than 100 people on Sunday, according to a health ministry official in the territory run by Hamas. Over 18,700 Palestinians have been killed and much of the north has been turned into a moonscape as a result of the 10-week-old war. In the southern region of the besieged territory, there are shelters and tent camps run by the United Nations. The majority of the approximately 1.9 million Palestinians, who make up nearly 85% of Gaza's population, have fled their homes to U.S. Sanctions on Israel. General C.Q. Brown, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and Austin, who reached Tel Aviv on Monday, will likely urge Israeli leaders to move on to a new stage of the conflict following weeks of intense bombardment and a ground offensive. Killing Hamas leaders, destroying tunnels, and rescuing hostages are the goals of the targeted operations that American officials have called for. These demands followed a warning from U.S. President Joe Biden that Israel's indiscriminate bombing is causing it to lose support from around the world. Major combat operations against Hamas will continue for several more months, according to Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, who made the announcement last week. Israel has issued more specific evacuation orders as troops advanced into the southern city of Khan Yunis earlier this month in response to pressure from the United States. However, Palestinians claim that no area of Gaza is safe from Israeli strikes, which have been ongoing throughout the territory. Israel has granted additional aid access by reopening its main cargo crossing with Gaza, following a request from the United States. Despite the fact that needs have skyrocketed and delivery is hindered in many areas due to fighting, the amount is still less than half of pre-war imports, based on remarks made by senior Israeli officials expressing the intent to deprive civilians of food, water, and fuel or linking the entry of aid to the release of hostages. Human Rights Watch, a New York-based organization, accused Israel on Monday of intentionally starving the Gaza population, which would be a war crime. Israel is not limiting aid, according to military spokesman Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, who also accused Hamas of stealing the aid and blamed the group for the suffering of civilians, the impendence of death and devastation. The conflict started when Hamas launched a shocking surprise attack, overwhelming Israel's border defenses. Approximately 240 individuals, including children, were abducted as thousands of militants stormed southern Israel, murdering 1,200 people, mostly civilians. Last month, during a truce, Israel released 240 Palestinian prisoners in exchange for the release of most of the remaining captives. However, around 129 hostages are still held by Hamas and other militants. Until the war comes to an end, Hamas has stated that no more hostages will be released. According to the health ministry, over 18,700 Palestinians have been killed, with thousands more buried beneath the rubble. The majority of those killed are women and minors. Deaths in battle are not treated differently by the ministry. According to the Israeli military, 127 soldiers have been killed during the ground offensive in Gaza. Without offering proof, it claims to have eliminated thousands of militants. By claiming that Hamas utilizes civilians as human shields, Israel attributes civilian deaths to the group. However, specific strikes are seldom discussed by the military. A senior official from the health ministry, Munir al-Bursh, told Al Jazeera television that at least 110 people were killed when Israeli forces bombed residential buildings in the urban Jabalia refugee camp in northern Gaza on Sunday. In recent days, there has been heavy fighting in the area. No one can retrieve the martyrs or take the wounded to hospitals, Amal Radwan, who is staying at a UN shelter in Jabalia, said. At the same time, the military made public images of what it claimed to be approximately $1.3 million in Israeli currency discovered in the residence of a senior Hamas operative within the camp.